Hey everyone, Duke here, and with the excitement over the Artifice armor cheese on Gahlran this week, it's clear that many Guardians are on the lookout to get the best stats possible on their gear. So today we're going to talk about every high stat armor farm in Destiny 2. First, a quick note on which stats to look out for. Resilience to me is still the #1 go-to, especially with some of the spikes in difficulty added this season. Getting to 100 resilience will give you 30% damage reduction from everything at all times in PvE and is too good to miss out on. And Titans even have the added benefit of quicker barricade cooldowns as well. After that, I'd recommend Discipline and Recovery as two stats that help in pretty much all scenarios. More grenade uptime is great, especially with the overall potency of grenades in general, and Recovery will allow your health regen to kick in quicker, with the added benefit of faster rift regeneration for Warlocks. Hunters additionally will want Mobility, as it ties into their dodge cooldown and may want or need to give up some recovery to do so. I'd only really recommend higher Intellect in PvP, as just doing damage and picking up orbs are going to be your main ways to charge super in PvE, and Strength is something I avoid in pretty much all builds, and is only going to be useful in extremely specialized scenarios. Now let's talk about some of the ways to farm some high stat armor. But first let's talk about the Armor Ghost mods. These mods guarantee at least 10 in a stat with a high chance to be even spikier. I prefer to use the Discipline Armorer here due to the fact that armor in Destiny drops in splits, with about half of the stats in Mobility, Resilience, and Recovery, and the other half in Discipline, Intellect, and Strength. Since I really don't want much if any Intellect or Strength, I want to increase my chances to put my big spike into Discipline, and then I'm just finding the RNG of getting the right mix of Resilience and Recovery. And for Hunters, they honestly just want all three of the top buckets of stats anyway, so if I get a good roll into Discipline, I'm really just looking for the most stats possible in the top half. With this Ghost mod equipped, our first farm is going to be using Defiant Engrams at the War Table. These engrams have never been easier to both acquire, as they now come from literally all activities, or use, as they no longer need any seasonal materials, and instead just need a bit of glimmer to be focused. Do note that you will need the Defiant Armor Focusing unlock, and have gotten the armor piece at least once before in order to start unlocking and focusing these specific pieces. Also in Season of Defiance, doing Defiant Battlegrounds with Defiant keys that you get throughout the game will guarantee either a weapon pattern for a weapon you don't have unlocked yet, or a high stat piece of armor, along with a chance for extra Defiant Engrams. And once you unlock the Vestian Ward upgrade, you'll be able to get a guaranteed extra Defiant Engram and more War Table reputation, which can then be used to focus more high stat armor. Next, let's talk about Master Dungeons. Master Dungeons are our only way to get Artifice armor, which have an additional mod slot in which you can pick any stat to get a +3 boost in. In effect, Artifice armor is just straight up better than an equivalent piece of non-Artifice armor. However, as mentioned, it only comes from Master Dungeons, which can be very challenging content, as well as require very high power levels, and still requires you actually getting a really good roll, because a great non-Artifice armor piece will still end up being better than just a good Artifice piece. I've also heard conflicting reports of Artifice armor just not dropping with very high stats so far this season, so we'll have to see if that gets changed up. But if you are able to farm them and have a team to do so with, Master Keitel checkpoints can be a very fast farm, as well as give you the chance to get 2 drops every time that you complete this boss fight. My personal favorite armor farm that I think is very, very highly underrated is the Pit of Heresy boss farm. This can only be done during Pit of Heresy featured weeks, but is insanely fast runs and guarantees a double spike high stat armor every single time. This is the only place in the game that guarantees that every single armor piece that you get will have not 1, but 2 stats with at least 16 plus stat rolls in each of them, and when used in conjunction with the Discipline Ghost mod, you have a great chance for both of those to be in highly sought after stats. Not only this, but I find this farm to be very consistently giving 65 plus total stat rolls, which is some of the highest possible total stat rolls you can get in the entire game. It is going to end up being better than a high percentage of the Artifice armor you're able to get. There's also no level requirement here either, as it is recommended power of 1600, so anyone is able to get in on this no matter their power level. Another important part of getting high total stat builds is your exotic. Having to use a collection exotic with like 48 total stats can significantly impact the total stats you're able to have in a build, so let's talk about a few ways to farm some higher stat exotics as well. First, for solo players, we have Legend and Master Lost sectors. These have been made more challenging than in seasons past, but they are very doable solo and have a pretty high drop rate of usually between 20 to 35%, that has actually just been increased as of this week. It's usually more worth it to run the Legend Lost sectors, as the added time and difficulty of Master Lost sectors isn't made up for in the additional drop rate that it has. But do note that this may be changed and could be different depending on the exact changes in the drop rate from this week. A huge positive of these Lost sectors is that they only drop a certain slot of armor each day, which allows you to drastically cut down on the loot pool compared to our other options. There is still quite a few different armor pieces in each slot though, of course, so it can be a grueling task to get exactly the piece you want, especially for newer players. One tip I would give though, especially for this season, is to wait for the EDZ Lost sectors. These are significantly shorter and easier Lost sectors than the others, especially compared to the Neomuna ones. We are talking in the range of 4 to 5 times faster in some cases. If you're really desperate for exotics, you can of course run on any day that has the piece that you need, but for time efficiency's sake, the EDZ Lost sectors are your ticket. I have a schedule on screen now so you can know when these will be available throughout the season. Another great exotic farm for those with a team or that are willing to LFG is higher level Nightfalls, especially once Grandmaster Nightfalls come out. Doing any level Nightfall and getting Platinum by defeating all of the champions will give you a chance in an exotic armor piece, with a higher chance on the highest level versions. There's also usually a few double Nightfall loot weeks that are ran each season, which makes farming Nightfalls for exotics, as well as Nightfall weapons and other endgame materials extremely rewarding during those weeks. Another way to farm exotics is new for Lightfall, and that is the Vex Strike Force public event on Neomuna. I've talked about this new event a few times, and it was recently buffed to appear more often. The great part of this event is it is doable as a solo player, as it is in a public space and will match you with others, and it is a guaranteed 100% chance for an exotic armor piece on completion. The downside is that even with the increase in appearance, it's still a pretty rare event, and can't just be done whenever you'd like, and instead you will need to keep your eyes open for it to appear on Neomuna in the Vex Incursion Zone area. So after you get all of this high stat armor, what do you do with it to create the stat distributions that you desire? Let's take a minute to talk about an incredibly useful third-party tool, D2 Armor Picker. Some of you may already use this tool, but if not, it basically allows you to choose certain stat distributions that you want, along with an exotic of your choice, and then comes back and gives you all the possible ways that you can reach those stats with the armor that you have on your account. This tool is incredibly useful rather than having to guess and check it all yourself, and can be set to work with certain fragments that affect your stats, along with stat mods, and even artifice armor. I hope this video helped all types of players find some different ways to farm out the armor stats you are looking for. If you have any other farming strategies that I didn't mention, make sure to share them in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.